The Ocean Tech Foundation's last-walled conference room had never felt so suffocating as it did that Wednesday morning, watching security pack up 3 years of research into cardboard boxes. My revolutionary ocean cleanup system dismissed as impractical and delusional by people who'd never even seen it in action. Dr. Chen, Marcus Thompson, the Foundation's director, said with practiced disappointment, "Let's be realistic. Your bioengineering approach is simply too experimental. The board needs proven solutions, not science fiction." I carefully wrapped the model of my cleanup system, a network of engineered microorganisms designed to break down plastic waste without harming marine life. The prototype that had already shown remarkable results in controlled testing. "The test results are clear," I said quietly. "If you just look at the data from the Pacific trials." "Enough," he waved dismissively. "Your funding is terminated. The Foundation needs practical solutions, not fantasy projects about plastic-eating bacteria." My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and until today, I was the lead researcher at one of America's largest environmental organizations. But I committed the cardinal sin of environmental science. I proposed a solution that seemed too good to be true. Tom Jong, my research assistant, caught me at the elevator. "They're already shutting down the lab," he whispered. "But don't worry, everything important is backed up. All the test data, all the genetic sequences." I nodded slightly, touching the hard drive in my bag. "The Pacific samples?" "Safe in a secondary lab. They don't even know it exists." "Good. Those samples would prove everything." The San Francisco fog felt appropriate as I walked to my car, my mind racing through the events that had led to this moment. The breakthrough had started with a simple observation: a unique strain of bacteria found in the Pacific garbage patch that had naturally evolved to metabolize certain types of plastic. But it wasn't just consuming the plastic. Through careful bioengineering, we'd enhanced its capabilities, creating a strain that could break down multiple types of plastic waste while producing harmless byproducts that actually nourish marine life. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Emily Wong at Scripps Oceanographic Institute. "Just heard about Ocean Tech. Those fools. But Sarah, the latest DNA sequencing results. This is bigger than we thought." Emily had been quietly running parallel tests, validating our results without the Foundation's knowledge. She'd seen the same remarkable plastic degradation rates in her samples. "The backup lab?" I texted back. "Fully operational. Your latest batch is showing even better results than predicted." I smiled, thinking of Thompson and the board, so certain they'd shut down a fantasy project. They had no idea that the most important research was happening completely off their radar. The thing about environmental science is that it's not just about the research. It's about funding, politics, and established methodologies. Question those, and you become a threat to the entire system. I learned that lesson 2 months ago when I first presented my preliminary findings to the board. "This is nonsense," Thompson had declared, barely glancing at the data. "You're suggesting that we can clean up millions of tons of ocean plastic with bacteria? It's absurd." "Not just bacteria," I corrected. "Engineered microorganisms specifically designed for this purpose. Look at the degradation rates." But they hadn't wanted to look. Traditional cleanup methods brought in reliable funding. My approach threatened that comfortable paradigm. What they didn't know was that we'd already started a larger-scale trial. 3 test sites in the Pacific garbage patch, carefully monitored and showing unprecedented results. Areas where plastic waste was literally disappearing, replaced by healthy marine ecosystems. My apartment felt empty that evening as I set up my makeshift research station on the dining room table. My laptop connected to our secure server, displaying test data that would make Thompson and the board choke on their certainties. The results were undeniable. In just 6 weeks, our engineered bacteria had broken down over 60% of the plastic waste in the test areas. Water quality readings were actually improving. Marine life was returning to previously dead zones. My phone rang. Dr. James Martinez from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. "Sarah," he said when I answered, "I just reviewed your latest trial data. This is revolutionary. How quickly can you get to Massachusetts?" I'd met James at a conference last year where he'd shown unusual interest in my unrealistic approach. "They seized my official research," I told him. "But not everything, I hope." The question was careful, measured. "No, The important data is safe. Good. He paused. Because I have something you need to see. Remember those anomalous results I mentioned in my Arctic samples? My heart started racing. The same degradation patterns. Exactly, and Sarah, the bacteria are adapting to colder temperatures naturally. This could work in any ocean environment. I sat down hard, my mind spinning. Independent confirmation from one of the world's top marine research institutions. We need to meet, I said. But not here. They'll be watching. Already planned. There's an international marine science conference in Sydney next week. Thompson and his crowd won't attend. It's too focused on experimental approaches. But there's someone you need to meet. She's been seeing similar results in the Indian Ocean. I glanced at my screen where test data showed the impossible plastic waste disappearing at rates that defied every existing cleanup model. Send me the details. After hanging up, I dove back into the data. The pattern was becoming clearer with each analysis. Our engineered bacteria weren't just consuming plastic. They were evolving and improving in the wild, adapting to different conditions while remaining safe for marine life. My phone buzzed again. A message from our monitoring team at one of the test sites. Dr. Chen, the latest satellite imagery. The plastic concentration is down 70%. Marine life readings are off the charts. What you've created, it's actually healing the ocean. I thought of Thompson and the board, so certain in their dismissal. They called my research impractical, my theories delusional. They tried to bury a solution that could save our oceans, all to protect their funding and reputations. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They thought stopping official trials would end the research. They didn't realize that 3 test sites were already proving them wrong. That scientists like James Martinez were seeing the same results. That somewhere in the Indian Ocean, more evidence was mounting. Tomorrow, I'd book my flight to Sydney. In 1 week, everything would change. But first, I had data to analyze. Because while Thompson and his colleagues were writing me off as a failed researcher, our oceans were healing in ways that should have been impossible. And that healing told a story that would shake the foundations of environmental science. The fog swirled against my windows as I worked through the night, each data point adding to a picture that was becoming impossible to dismiss. I thought of my father, a marine biologist who died trying to document plastic pollution's impact on whale populations. Sometimes, he told me before his last voyage, the biggest breakthroughs come from the ideas everyone else rejects. He was right, and soon the world would understand why. Part 2. The Tide Turns. The Sydney International Marine Conservation Conference sprawled across the Harbourfront Convention Centre. But the real action was happening in a small meeting room overlooking the water. As I walked in carrying 3 years of rejected research, I knew I found my people. Dr. Chen, Dr. Amara Patel from the Indian Ocean Research Initiative approached, tablet in hand. Your microorganism design is extraordinary. The plastic degradation rates we're seeing, they're unprecedented. I studied her, brilliant, practical, the kind of scientist who cared more about solutions than accolades. This was the researcher James had mentioned, who'd been witnessing similar results in her waters. Show her, James called from his workstation. Show her what happened in your Maldives test site. For the next 4 hours, we compared data sets, my Pacific garbage patch trials, James' Arctic testing, Amara's work in the Indian Ocean. 3 independent studies, all showing the same remarkable results, plastic waste disappearing at rates that defied conventional cleanup models, with marine ecosystems actually thriving in the aftermath. The microorganisms aren't just consuming the plastic. Amara explained, showing underwater footage. Look at this sequence. They're breaking it down into compounds that are actually nourishing the marine food web. The biodiversity readings in our test areas are higher than in untouched control sites. It's becoming a positive feedback loop, I realized. The healthier the ecosystem gets, the more effectively it processes the remaining plastic. James finished. It's not just cleanup, it's restoration. My hands trembled as I pulled up my latest satellite imagery, and the bacteria naturally stop reproducing once plastic levels fall below a certain threshold. They become part of the ecosystem without disrupting it. Self-limiting, Amara smiled. Nature's perfect balance. The implications were staggering. Current ocean cleanup methods were expensive, energy-intensive, and barely made a dent in the problem. But we found a way to harness nature's own processes to not just remove plastic, but restore damaged ecosystems in the process. My phone buzzed, a message from Tom. Thomson is claiming credit for early research on your project at the EPA conference. Says it was too dangerous to pursue. What should I do? I smiled. Nothing. Let him talk. We have bigger plans. Over the next 3 days, we worked around the clock, combining our data and refining deployment models. Other researchers joined us, a marine biologist from Norway, an oceanographer from Chile, a genetic engineer from New Zealand. Each brought their own insights and validation. It's not just working in one ocean environment, Dr. Johansen from Norway explained, showing his results. The microorganisms adapt to different temperatures, salinities, and plastic compositions. They're evolving in real time to maximize efficiency. Traditional methods missed this approach entirely, James added, because they were focused on physical removal. Nobody thought to look for biological solutions already emerging in nature. On the third day, we presented our combined findings to the conference. The room overflowed with marine scientists, conservationists, and government representatives, people who understood the urgency of the plastic crisis and were desperate for real solutions. The data was undeniable. Satellite imagery showed plastic concentrations decreasing by up to 80% in test areas. Water quality measurements revealed healthier ocean chemistry. Biodiversity surveys documented marine life returning to previously devastated regions. During a break, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Dr. Chen, this is Admiral Lisa Rivera from the U.S. Navy Environmental Division. We've been monitoring your test sites through our satellite network. We need to talk immediately. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Meetings with naval research teams, emergency consultations with the UN Environmental Program, fast-tracked environmental impact assessments from multiple governments. Then came the call that changed everything. Dr. Chen, the UN Secretary General's voice was solemn. We've reviewed the combined data from all test sites. This is unprecedented. The Security Council is convening an emergency session on ocean restoration. How quickly can you scale up deployment? I thought of our samples, our production facilities, our distribution plans. We're ready. The news broke on a Friday morning. Revolutionary ocean cleanup method shows dramatic success in Pacific garbage patch. My phone exploded with messages. Environmental groups, government agencies, former colleagues, and then the one I've been waiting for, Thomson from Ocean Tech. Sarah, his voice had lost its condescension. The Foundation would like to discuss your return, with full funding and directorship of a new department focused on bioremediation. No thank you, I interrupted. I'm actually heading to a meeting at the UN. We're establishing an international ocean restoration initiative. I'm leading the scientific team. The silence was delicious. The next months were intense. Training deployment teams, setting up bioproduction facilities, working with governments to coordinate global release strategies. But the results exceeded our wildest hopes. Satellite imagery confirmed dramatic reduction in plastic concentrations across all test regions. Marine life flourished in areas that had been virtual dead zones. Coastal communities reported cleaner beaches and rebounding fish populations. 1 year after my humiliating exit from Ocean Tech, I stood at the United Nations General Assembly, presenting our results to world leaders. Thomson was in the audience. I spotted him in the environmental NGO section, wearing an unconvincing smile as I received a standing ovation. The paradigm shift in ocean conservation, the Secretary General announced, begins today. But the real victories came in smaller moments. A sea turtle sanctuary in Costa Rica reporting record hatchling survival rates. A fishing village in Indonesia seeing fish stocks return after decades of decline. A coral reef in Australia showing signs of recovery after years of plastic-induced stress. James now runs the Atlantic Deployment Initiative. Amara coordinates efforts across the Indian Ocean. Tom leads our monitoring program, documenting ecosystem recovery worldwide. Last week, I received a letter that made me cry. Dear Dr. Chen, 20 years ago, I watched my father's fishing business collapse as the oceans died around us. Yesterday, my son caught more fish in our local waters than I've seen in 2 decades. You didn't just clean the ocean, you gave us back our way of life. Thank you for not giving up when they tried to stop you. Carlos Mendoza, Puerto San Carlos, Mexico. I keep that letter in my office at the new Global Ocean Restoration Center. Next to it sits a framed copy of my termination notice from Ocean Tech. Signed by Thompson. Together, they remind me that breakthrough moments often look like failure to those too invested in old ways of thinking. The center itself is different from traditional research institutions. We encourage innovation, cross-disciplinary approaches, indigenous knowledge integration. Every researcher is taught to look for solutions that already exist in nature, to follow the evidence even when it challenges convention. Thompson left Ocean Tech last month. His replacement has approached us about collaboration, though they call our technology by a different name now. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the oceans are healing. My father's photograph sits on my desk. Sometimes, late at night when reviewing satellite imagery of recovering ocean regions, I imagine telling him about all this. About how his death led to discoveries that are saving the very ecosystems he loved. About how sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the ideas everyone else rejects. The microorganisms we engineered are now deployed in all major ocean garbage patches. The restoration protocols we developed are taught in marine science programs worldwide. What was once dismissed as impractical and delusional has become the foundation of a new era in environmental restoration. Last month, a young marine biologist approached me with an unusual observation. Some of our microorganisms had developed the ability to break down previously resistant microplastics. Everyone says it's just an anomaly, she said nervously. But I think there's something more happening. Look deeper, I told her. Nature often solves problems before we even understand them. Her discovery is already helping us address the most persistent forms of ocean plastic pollution. The old guard still resists sometimes. Change is hard, especially for those who built careers on previous approaches. But the results speak for themselves. Every new satellite image shows expanding zones of recovery, blue spaces where there were once islands of garbage. Yesterday, I spoke at a marine science graduation. A student asked what it felt like to be escorted from Ocean Tech that foggy Wednesday morning. It felt like failure, I admitted. But sometimes, what looks like failure is actually the first step toward breakthrough. The important thing is to trust nature's wisdom, even when everyone tells you you're wrong. The battle for our oceans isn't over. There are still challenges to solve, still damaged ecosystems to heal. But we've changed the approach. We've learned to work with nature's own intelligence rather than imposing our limited solutions. And it all started with a fantasy project and the courage to see possibilities where others saw only obstacles.